Hey again, let's talk about VA loans. What does VA stand for? It stands for Veterans Administration. So, what these loans cover is anyone that has served in the military, whether that's active duty or reserves. This also covers the National Guard as well as the Coast Guard. It's 2025. It also covers Space Force. I don't know if you have run across someone that serves in the Space Force, but anyone that has served in the military can be eligible for VA loans. One thing about VA loans that's very important is that the veteran or the active duty military member gets their eligibility checked up front. Okay. So we want to make sure the VA properly has their eligibility documented. It's a very easy and quick process. In fact, a homebuyer can go pull their own COE. That stands for Certificate of Eligibility. So you might hear that term thrown around with VA loans. But also a lender can pull that on behalf of the homebuyer. So one of the things I do with pre-approval on VA, I really like to make sure we have that COE, that Certificate of Eligibility, up front so that we don't have any issues later on. There can be certain cases, especially with some folks that served way back in the day, where sometimes their VA records might not be easy to find. There are some cases from the 70s and 80s for folks that served in that time period where there might be some of their records missing. So it's just really important we explore that up front, that we make sure their eligibility is good to go. So VA loans cover 100% financing, no down payment required. I work with a vast majority VA loans. It's a big part of my business. Being in the Augusta area, we've got Fort Eisenhower, we've got Cybersecurity Command. It's a big VA market, and that's really good for our real estate locally. I would say that's a pretty big portion of a lot of the folks moving in and moving out. And so if you are entering the real estate space and building a business, make sure you get your piece of the pie. Become somewhat familiar with how PCSing works, that permanent change of station. What time of the year is it? How many families each year on average come into the area and leave the area that are VA? So it's a really important piece of our market, and it's important that you get your piece of the pie. So don't be daunted by it. If you need help kind of understanding some of the lingo, some of the ins and out, reach out to me. I'm happy to be a resource for you there. Like all loans I've mentioned, gift funds are allowed for down payment and closing costs. Well, Aaron, why would they want a down payment if it's 100% financing? Sometimes a home buyer may want a very specific monthly payment, and to get that monthly payment, they may need to make a down payment so that they're borrowing less and so that their monthly payment is lower. I do have VA clients fairly regularly choose to make down payments, especially if they chose to sell their home at a different military base. As they're stationed and move here, they want to tap that equity, use that equity to help keep their next monthly payment lower. So just because it's 100% financing doesn't mean everyone will. And again, everyone's financial scenario is unique, and we're going to work towards that and make sure we accomplish that. VA loans do not have a loan limit. So like the other two loans we've covered so far, conventional and FHA, these do not have a loan limit. This is instead based on the borrower's VA eligibility. And you've heard me say that term at the beginning of this, but that's really important. That shows how much of a VA loan someone can use. The loan limit, or the max amount they can borrow, is also based on a factor called their residual income. And this is kind of a back end number that all lenders run with VA loans. So unlike other loan types, VA doesn't explicitly look at a debt to income ratio, but what they look at is, okay, after this home buyer has paid taxes, insurance, paid all their other monthly debts, how much income is remaining? That's why it's called residual income. And then the VA sets certain requirements based on the location of the country that they are purchasing, with how much of that leftover or residual income they need to then qualify. So this is something not a lot of people understand or even know about VA loans, and many lenders don't even know this about VA loans or understand it. And so we're very proficient here at Atlantic Bay with VA loans, and we know exactly how they work. Like FHA, we have a 600 minimum credit score. And again, like with FHA, you may see other lenders out there offer and advertise a lower credit score than 600. But again, my warning with the FHA and the credit score is just make sure that home buyer really investigates that, really understands the fine print, because oftentimes they may be required to have reserves or make a down payment or meet other compensating factors. Okay. And the VA loans are meant for primary residence only. So like with FHA, it's the intent at the time of purchase. What is your intent at the time of purchase? Now, the VA is very flexible with this term of primary residence. As an example, you could have a active duty military member that is stationed in a totally separate state, and they would like to locate their family to the Augusta area because they really like the schools. Or maybe they have family close that can help take care of the family. The military member's family occupying that home as their primary residence fulfills that requirement. Okay. So the VA is very flexible with this. And again, kind of like the residual income I mentioned, we're very proficient with being able to work through this and work within the guidelines VA allows, but also know that we have some flexibility there and we can help meet a family's needs. So just understand that and remember that. You can have multiple VA loans at the same time. I hear often, Aaron, I've already used my VA, I can't use it again. Well, that's not true. VA allows you to have multiple VA loans. The important thing there is just to check early in the home loan process, really with pre-approval, before pre-approval even, to see how much eligibility you have remaining and if you can use that. If you have partial eligibility, it's entirely possible you can still buy another home with 100% financing. If that's not the case, you can still buy another home with the VA. You may just need to make a down payment. And there's not a set in stone rule or requirement with this. Every veteran and active duty military member's VA eligibility is different. It depends on what they used before, and it depends on what they're looking to use on the next one. Now, VA has really designed these loans to help these military families that move around often almost build up a little bit of a rental portfolio. So if someone is leaving a military base, relocating to Fort Eisenhower here locally, they don't have to sell that home. And in fact, they can even get a rent analysis done by the lender doing their new loan to offset that old mortgage. And so that really helps with their ability to qualify and really kind of have just a fresh start altogether and offset that old mortgage with some rental income to help them qualify for the new mortgage. And again, this is something that's not often known or talked about, even with lenders, because a lot of lenders want the easy way out. And sometimes the easy way out is saying, you can't have both. You can have both. And if you don't qualify for both, well, there's even another step we can do. We can look at a rent analysis, see what the market rent is for that home, and basically offset that mortgage. Talked about it a little bit before, but residual income versus DTI. Almost every other single loan out there in the world looks at that debt to income ratio, that DTI. VA looks at residual income, gives a lot more flexibility versus other loans. And in many cases, someone using a VA loan can qualify for much more than if they use conventional or FHA. So keep that in mind. Talked about it again on the previous slide, but family can fulfill the primary residence guidelines. Another example of this is a actively deployed military member overseas. Obviously, their family has to live somewhere if they have, a spouse and children. And really, they can live anywhere in the States if they're actively deployed overseas. And we'll work through those details, make sure they're covered. A lot of times we'll be communicating by email and working through that. But we can accommodate all that and work through that. And as we team up with that, we can make it a good experience for the home buyers. VA does not allow unmarried couples to be on a loan together unless both are VA eligible. So in most cases, we can't have an unmarried individual on the loan with the person that's VA eligible unless they both are VA. And so this is something to keep in mind. A lot of times I'll hear, hey, I want to apply with my fiance, or I want to apply with my boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the case is. Can't do that on VA. There is a way we can still have them listed on title, but it needs to be done after the official first closing. So if you have further questions on this, I'm happy to share examples. Just reach out to me. That's kind of a basic rundown of VA. Nothing too difficult. And again, I'm here to help you through that, so don't feel like you have to memorize all this. This is just a rundown. If you need further details, reach out to me, but hopefully this is helpful to you. Next one we're doing will be USDA, so we'll dive into that next. Thanks. Bye-bye.